Hey everybody, how's it going? Today we're going to be going over and showing you how to install the Roadmaster Direct Connect base plate kit here on a 2016 Chevrolet Equinox. So there's a few different kinds of Roadmaster base plate kits available for this vehicle. Two in particular. There's the crossbar style and then the direct connect style, which is what we have here. Now the crossbar style does still work well, but the direct connect is going to be far more seamless. We're not going to have to worry about that bulky tow bar each and every time we need to hook up or remove our vehicle from the motorhome. It's going to make things that much more seamless, cut down on the number of parts that we're going to be dealing with each time. Now with the direct connect style, we're going to be compatible with all Roadmaster motorhome mounted tow bars. And what I mean by motorhome mounted is the tow bar actually gets stored on the motorhome when it's not being used. So this is what our base plate kit looks like hooked up to our tow bar and attached to our motorhome. Now this is going to be how we're going to have it set up when we're driving down the road, flat towing our vehicle. But when we're ready to unhook, we get to the campsite, we want to take our vehicle in town, go get a bite to eat. It's super simple to do this. We're going to start by removing the pins. So there's a linch pin here on the opposite side. We just lift open that little clamp there and we can pull it straight out. And then we may need to lift up on our arms as well. Now keep in mind, you'll have to break free the tension from your tow bar arms in order to get that pin out most likely. But we're going to do that on either side here. Take out our safety chain cable. And now it's time to remove the arms. So that's another reason I really like this base plate kit here, is that it has a nice removable arm design. So we don't have to worry about looking at some bulky base plate kit on our vehicle when we're driving around town. Everything is going to be hidden behind the bumper here. The only thing that's not flush are the safety chain tabs here. And the reason those aren't flush to the bumper is it's going to help prevent scratching our bumper each time we need to attach our safety chains and cables. But back to the base plates here, the removable arm design, it's super simple. We have a little spring-loaded pull pin over here. We pull that, and then we rotate out in either direction and pull straight back. And as you can see here, everything's nice and hidden within the bumper there. The only thing that sticks out is the safety chain tab. So we've got the arms out, we showed you that. Now let's go ahead and show you how you install them. So we have a removable arm, one on each side. And what we need to do is we need to rotate it down in either direction here. We just want to make sure that the lugs here are facing straight up and down. Then we're going to insert it into the opening there on our base plate, push all the way back till you put tension on that spring-loaded pin, and then we can rotate in either direction, just like so, until it locks into place. So in regards to installation, through the video here, you guys are probably going to be overwhelmed at one point or another. We do have to tear the bumper off, remove a few other things, but I'll be honest with you guys, this is actually one of the more easier base plate kits to install by yourselves at home with just some common tools and limited mechanical knowledge. Now, most base plate kits actually require drilling several holes into the vehicle, which adds to the install difficulty, and you also could potentially be voiding some warranties. This kit here, however, is completely bolt-on, so there's no drilling or modifications needed to the frame. Just a few cuts around the bumper plastic to allow for clearance of the removable arms. But that's pretty much it. We'll go ahead and walk you guys through this entire process now, step by step, to give you the confidence to do it at home by yourself. So the first step of our installation here, we need to open up the hood on our vehicle. And on either side here, we have these little half trim panel covers. So these are held on with 3 of our push pin fasteners. So we need to go ahead and remove these so we can remove this little half cover here. And we have one of these on each side. We need to remove them both. We're basically just going to be trying to pry up the center section there on that fastener, and then we can remove the rest of it. Next, you're going to need to grab a T20 Torx bit. We're going to have a couple Torx screws at the front here of our fascia. We're going to go ahead and remove those. So this piece isn't actually going to be removed. This is attached to our bumper fascia. We're just loosening this so it doesn't hang up when we try to remove the bumper. So now we need to come into either side here of our fender well liner. We need to remove the fasteners attaching the fender liner to our bumper. So we're going to have a few different kinds, starting with the push pin fasteners. So again, just pry the center section out and the rest should follow. Then we need to switch over to our Torx bit here, the same one we used earlier. So we have a couple Torx screws. And then finally, we're going to have a bolt sort of upward like so that we'll remove with a 7mm socket. Now you can see we can peel our fender liner back here. And we need to do this on both sides. So next we're going to come underneath the vehicle here, and again on either side we're going to have a couple screws holding the bottom lip of our bumper fascia to the inside of the fender liner here, so we need to remove both of those. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull out our bumper fascia here. We're going to reach up back behind the bumper and disconnect the fog lights if our current model has it. The particular one we're using today doesn't, so we're not going to be doing this, but most of the time you just depress a tab there on the clip and pull straight down, and you should be able to remove the connector. But again, that's only for models with the factory fog lights. So now we're ready to remove the bumper here. We're going to start on either side, get our hands in between the fender liner and the bumper, and we're just going to start pulling out to release the clips. And now we can go ahead and just set our bumper fascia aside in a safe place so it doesn't get damaged. Next thing we need to do is turn our attention to the bumper core here. So you're going to see all these little black plastic studs here throughout the center of it. So these are used to attach a wiring harness to the back side of the bumper core here. We need to go ahead and remove those. So what we're going to be doing is taking a pair of needle nose pliers. We're going to be pinching that and just simply pushing in like so. So the next thing we need to do is remove the power steering cooler that's attached to the bottom side of the bumper core. Now, not all models have this, so again, ours actually doesn't have this feature, so we don't have to worry about it. But if yours does, there should only be a couple bolts there holding it to the bottom side of the bumper beam. You'd want to go ahead and remove those and let it hang. So next, we're actually going to be removing the bumper beam. So on either side, we're going to have 3 bolts. We'll remove those both sides with a 13mm socket. Now with all of our fasteners removed, we should just be able to remove the bumper beam like so. With the bumper beam removed, we're going to turn our attention to the passenger side here. This is going to be our ambient temperature sensor, and that's going to be attached to this plastic housing here using one of the clips. So what we're going to do is take our trim panel tool, we're just going to pry that up like so. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a Dremel tool here, and you can see we already have a cut line marked here, but basically just on the inside corner of those 2 edges and straight down, we're going to be removing this flap here from this little plastic shroud. And if we want, we can come back with a file or a razor blade here and clean up all those rough edges. Now we need to jump over to the driver's side, and we're pretty much just going to be removing the same material along the inside edge there. However, we don't have an ambient temperature sensor to worry about over here. Now with an extra set of hands, we're going to go ahead and place our main receiver brace over to the factory bumper beam flange and resecure it with the factory hardware. So we've got a couple bolts, one on each side holding the base plate up now. What we want to do is we want to insert the rest of the remaining hardware using some red Loctite, and then once we get the other holes in, we can remove the ones we installed previously and apply some red Loctite to those as well. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to come underneath the vehicle here. We're going to locate the bolt on the driver's side holding our subframe to the body. So we're going to take an 18mm socket and we're going to remove that 1 bolt. Now we do need to do this on both sides, but it is critical that you only do one side at a time. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take one of our lower support brackets that looks like this. We're going to be taking the long 14mm bolt that comes in our kit. We're going to place a split lock washer over that. Then we're going to stick that through the bottom side of our lower bracket, and then we're going to place on one of our spacer tubes. Now we're going to go ahead and thread this into the hole that we just removed the factory bolt from. We're just going to hand tighten this for now. Now we're going to attach this side here of the lower support bracket to the main base plate. So we're going to take the bolts here in our kit, 1/2 inch, these are smaller ones. We're going to place some red Loctite. So I'm not going to say this every time, but all of our fasteners we're going to be using to install our base plate are going to need this red Loctite. But we're going to place one of our bolts there through the hole, line up our flanges, and then on the other side there, we're going to be using a split lock washer and a hex nut. So there's one on, and we'll just do that for the other as well. So now we're going to tighten and torque this bolt here to the subframe using a 22mm socket. And now we'll do the same thing for these two bolts here using a 3/4 inch socket and wrench. And now we'll repeat that same process over on the passenger side. Next thing we need to do is, over on the driver's side, we need to loosen the fasteners, securing our washer fluid reservoir to the vehicle. So you're going to use a 10mm socket. We have 2 bolts, one at the top tucked back there, and then we have one 10mm nut at the bottom there. So let's go ahead and get those out now. Next we have the horn over here on the driver's side, and again, 10mm socket, 1 bolt. Next, we're going to take one of our upper brackets here. We sort of want this cut out to be facing outside the vehicle, and we are working on the driver's side just as a reference. But basically, we're just going to be sneaking this between the wiring harness and our coolant line there, just like so. We're going to place it into position just like that. And now we're going to take our 1/2 inch bolts here, these smaller ones that come in our kit, same ones we used earlier. We're going to be securing that upper bracket to the main base plate receiver. But again, we need to use red Loctite on all of our bolts. We're also going to be following this up with a split lock washer and a hex nut. So in your instructions, it has you use the bolt to come up underneath like so. However, we actually have a flange in the way on the frame of our vehicle that's not allowing to do this. So rather than hacking into that metal, I'm just going to simply place the bolt up top like so, and then we'll secure underneath with the split lock washer and the hex nut. So I will say, doing the bolt from the top here is going to make this inside one a little bit trickier to get your hardware on there, but it still can be done. So we're going to be grabbing a 1/2 inch bolt, but this one's going to be a little bit longer than the ones we've been using. This is 1 3/4 inches long. And then we're going to grab our little spacer plate here. We're going to sneak that behind the frame like so. Line up our holes here. Shove our bolt through. And then on the back side there, we're going to secure that with a lock nut and a hex nut. So in order to do that, you're probably going to have to maneuver that washer fluid reservoir out of the way a little bit more. And once we get that started, now we're going to come back and tighten and torque our hardware again, similar to how we did earlier, to the specifications and our instructions. And now don't forget about our 3 bolts here, but once we get these torqued down, we'll just jump over to the other side and repeat that same process. Now we're going to take our wiring harness here, and we're going to attach it to the top of the main brace here for our base plate kit using the provided zip ties. And if we had a power steering cooler, we'd attach that to the 2 standoff tabs on the bottom of the base plate. And now we'll head over to our bumper fascia there and make the required cuts. The first thing we're going to be doing is removing this foam pad on the inside here. There are a couple clips on the outside that hold it in place. Since we're not reusing it, we can sort of just tear it a little bit to get it out just like that. So now we need to do a little bit of trimming on either side here to allow for clearance of the arms there. So we don't really have exact instructions in regards to how much we need to cut out. It's sort of just a rough estimate. So I kind of have like a half moon shaped here on the outside edge here on these 2 lower portion where the arms are going to be sticking through. So if you want to test fit the bumper and then mark out a little bit closer where you're going to need to cut, certainly not a bad idea. But once we have a rough area outlined, we can go ahead and remove that material with a Dremel tool. Once we have that material out, I can come back with a file or a razor blade here and clean up those rough edges. And now it's time to put everything back together on the vehicle, and that's going to do it today for our look and installation of the Roadmaster Direct Connect base plate kit here on our 2016 Chevrolet Equinox.